Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Promoted channel. I appreciate you joining me today. So the video I'm going to do today is going to be a little bit of a mixture hybridization between a reaction and my educated opinion. So over LinkedIn, as well as through our website's contact form and just a couple different sources, I have had a lot of parents and young professionals reach out recently from things that they've heard or read over the last couple of months, really just saying that Gen Z is not a desired generation in the workforce. And so I did my own research. I got a compilation here of data from a variety of sources, and I haven't really given it a whole lot of thought, nor have I really looked deep into the overall statistics. I have the list here in front of me, and I'm not quite yet reading it. So that's why I say this is going to be a hybridization of a little bit of reaction, but also me trying to give some insight to help. And so let's just jump right in here and kind of see what the overall takeaway was. So the key sources I'm looking at here are coming from a Forbes survey, a Intelligent.com survey, a Deloitte survey, and Harvard Law School. Some of the reporting places were actually those same ones, or I guess Deloitte and Harvard Law weren't the reporting ones, but Forbes has reported obviously on their own surveys. Same thing with Intelligent.com. And then The Hill, New York Post, and Newsweek have also referenced these in a variety of ways as well, each kind of pointing out different key statistics. But overall, I wanted to kind of provide really what the studies say and my 2 cents on all of this. So I'm not necessarily going to pick out each study individually. Between them all, it's a few thousand leaders. The Intelligent.com one was the bigger one on its own. That was just around 1,000 business leaders currently, I believe specifically C-suite and executives. So they are the higher ups in the organizations. And what their overall kind of impression and results have been from Gen Zers. And so first and foremost, let's actually define our generations here. And one thing I think that's going to be useful is how much of the workforce does each generation make up? So right now we have pretty much 4 generations that make up our workforce. So we got boomers, Xers, millennials, and Zers. So boomers are going to be born from 1946 to 1964. They are around 11.3% of the workforce here in 2024. Obviously, that number is decreasing because they are in retirement mode. Definitely every single year, boomers are retiring. So that number is decreasing, and that's going to counterbalance with Gen Z, which is born from 1997 to 2012. So obviously from 2012, those of you that are 12 years old, if you're actually watching this video, you are not in the workforce yet. So that's going to be the growing number. And they are an anticipated 11.7% of the workforce in 2024. Then we got millennials and Xers. So millennials are from 1981 to 1996. They are the single most populated portion with 44% of the workforce here. And again, they're from 1981 to 1996. And then you got Gen Xers, which are from 1965 to 1980, and they make up about 33%. So again, you got Xers and millennials together who are making up 77% and are on the young age of the equation. What is this, 28 years old, through the high end being just shy of 60. I believe 59 is what that math would be. So 28 to 59. 59, generally, you're going to have a decent little bit of chunk of retirement or before you're retiring left. So pretty much at least for the next 5 to 7 years, 77% of the workforce is here to stay. So that's the thing that Gen Zers also need to understand, because one of the key points before we dive into any judgment at all is understanding your leverage. So even if Gen Z banded together, locked arm in arms and said, we're not going to work at all unless whatever potentially these issues aren't going to happen, that's 11.7% of the workforce, which in this day and age right now, between AI, automation, and robotics, probably is going to be a negligible impact on production and productivity anyways. So please understand that right now, Gen Z doesn't have the leverage. Not to mention, not only are they a small percentage, but just by nature of being inexperienced, you also are not the major value add when it comes to the workforce as well, because you don't have a bunch of proven experience. You have a significant amount of theoretical experience. And you could argue that that's partially the education system's fault for focusing on theory versus things that are tangible and tactical. But just wanted to break that down. So in summary, workforce consists of 11.3% of boomers, which are 1946 to 1964, 33% Xers, 1965 to 1980, 44% Millennials, 1981 to 1996, and 11.7%, 1997 to 2012. If you all think you know which generation I'm in, leave it in the comments below. I think it's probably pretty obvious, but go ahead and throw that in. All right. So what are executives saying amongst these surveys? So diving right in. So first things I got in front of me is that 60% of employers have fired a Gen Z person that they hired in 2024. So that is going to be the same year they were hired and fired, and that happened from 60% of these survey respondents. Let's see. Employers frequently cited poor preparedness, professionalism, and communication skills, with 75% of companies reporting that recent graduates are unsatisfactory. We got generational differences in workforce expectations shaped by experiences like the pandemic and financial instability have further fueled skepticism. Experts point to systemic failures in education, which prioritizes theory over workplace skills, and a lack of robust onboarding and mentorship programs in companies. Addressing these gaps through training and development is essential by fostering long-term success. Okay, so we got a couple different things to break down here. Let's take each of them one by one. So 60% of people responding saying that they fired a Gen Zer the same year that they were hired. It's hard to tell from that statistic alone how much that is Gen Z, because 2024 was a big layoff year. And I'm going to assume, I may take things at face value and also take the syntax at face value, and firing is not the same as laid off. So to me, this might be a reflection of Gen Z, but because we don't have a definition of what firing here means, this could be a reflection simply of the layoffs and things that have happened in the economy in 2024. So that one, I think it has too much nuance. We maybe toss that one aside. 75% reporting that recent graduates are unsatisfactory, frequently citing poor preparedness, professionalism, and communication. I would probably have to back this one up, and this one is not entirely shocking. I also do not think that this is unique to Gen Z. I think that this is largely the case with young people in general. It is the whole concept of the youth is wasted on the young, and people need to mature, and that, wisdom is effectively knowledge plus time, right? And this to me is something that comes with experience and maturity. Do I think the education system could be better here? As was referenced as well as a common thing in these studies and in employers' opinions of the overall market itself, is that the education system is failing the graduates by not teaching these things. I do agree with that aspect as well. But I also think that by being young, you haven't refined your communication skills. You have only generally talked to other young people, maybe your parents, and you're not well practiced in being in the room with 4 levels of hierarchy and millionaires and billionaires, and being able to have a productive, effective conversation. You're just not practiced, and you can only do so much of that in the education system. Professionalism, I think the biggest thing here is going to really boil down to showing up every day and doing your work every day, and also not bringing emotion or your political opinion into the workspace. I think these are probably the biggest things that I have seen broken down in other sources when it comes to Gen Z, is not bringing your politics. So not being, so easily offended, not worried about the state of the presidency, not talking about these things. When it comes to emotion, just being relatively stoic, being logical, being focused, not necessarily getting so riled up or coming in sad every day, and also just showing up. The amount of frequency, it was very, very crazy. In my last role, we had 11 people in my department. It was not, I do not think this is an inaccurate statement, that every single week I had one of my 4 Gen Zers call out at least one day. So it would rotate between the 4. But on any given week, I could bank on the fact that one of them would be out. My Xers maxed out vacation and were being forced to take it in order to not lose it effectively. Same thing with my millennial hires. And there were no boomers in the department. So everybody fell into the other 2 generations. And yeah, there just doesn't seem to be as much of a work ethic to understand that just because you felt bad or making a decision, maybe you went out, got a little over the top intoxicated and now you're feeling it Monday morning, whatever. All of these things play into professionalism. So I think that is probably pretty valid. And poor preparedness, and I'm going to circle this back to education. Okay, now we also got in here, which was interesting, is that employers, I guess I'd want to know the source of this, but people criticizing the overall onboarding and mentorship program of companies themselves. I think that this one is a mixed bag. I think that some companies do this great and some companies don't. And I don't know that that's ever going to go away, just like I don't expect communication and professionalism to ever not be a fault of the new generation entering. I think these are things that just come with experience and our lessons learned. So while it is a valid criticism that companies are probably not adapting or being effective in their onboarding, I don't know that that's going to affect Gen Z in particular. If a company's bad at onboarding, they're bad at onboarding. It's not going to be that they're bad for Gen Z and great for millennials and bad for Xers. I don't think that's really how that's going to work. So I think that's not really a moot excuse. So now I got a true list of overall statistics between all the sources we mentioned before here. So we got, I guess some of these are going to be recapped. So we got 60% of employers have fired at least one Gen Z employee that they hired in 2024. 75% of companies reported some or all recent college graduates as unsatisfactory. 1 in 6 companies are hesitant to hire recent college graduates. 1 in 7 companies may avoid hiring new college graduates in 2025. 50% of employers cited lack of motivation as a primary issue in Gen Z. 46% of employers noted a lack of professionalism. 39% of employers pointed at poor communication skills. 20% of employers observed Gen Z employees being late to work. 15% of employers reported frequent late assignment submissions. 54% of companies offer office etiquette training, with 25% mandating it specifically for Gen Z hires. 80% of companies placed underperforming Gen Z hires on PIPs. Wow. 50% of Gen Z workers prioritize work-life balance in job considerations. Okay. Wow. All right. So this is a lot. So let's kind of maybe break these down a little bit into absorbable chunks, I guess you could say. So really, there's a couple different themes here. Key theme number one that we can address and maybe also offer some advice on is clearly the overwhelming majority of people, or at least a noticeable chunk when you're talking 1 in 6 that are hesitant now, 1 in 7 expected to be hesitant in 2025. 80% of companies are putting underperforming Gen Zs on PIPs, 60% firing and hiring in the same year, 75% reporting all or recent college graduates as unsatisfactory. Sorry, some or all of recent college graduates unsatisfactory. So that's an overall theme. All those statistics are saying the same thing. Employers are hesitant of Gen Z, period. Now, we got why. Lack of motivation, lack of professionalism, poor communication, being late to work, and late assignment submission. Honestly, I think if you take out communication, I think really it's professionalism. So you got professionalism, being late, and being late to work, and late submissions. To me, that's all being professional. And I'm going to really blame the school system and education system a lot on this. I've known multiple people who went through college. I even think back to when I was in regular, elementary, middle, and high school, and being late on assignments wasn't an issue. Now, especially if you had the grades elsewhere in the program or in the class to make up for it, who cares? Take the hit. So I think that that's a level of the education system, also probably a level of parents, but it's something that I think Gen Z, you guys can fix so quickly. And ironically, you could turn the tide on this so quickly as well. So you could very easily fix the late work and late assignments by simply being early to the interview. That alone right there will probably shed some light. Something else that you can do is for every interview that you land, you could put together a little one-pager that's here's the bullet points in your job description, and here's why I know I can do that, and here's what I can't do and what I'm going to do to learn it, right? Something that's very quick. So that's kind of doing an assignment ahead of time, and then you have showing up to the interview itself early. Setting that tone, setting those habits, you could overcome. That's 35% of the reason that employers are having issues with your generation. boom, you could overcome that very quickly. Interview number one, no questions asked, especially because interview number one is also going to be usually a recruiter, HR, talent acquisition, not the hiring manager. Having that little one pager, brilliant. We already talked about the professionalism and we already talked about communication. Communication, I'll actually link down below. I did a soft skills video recently. I would highly recommend watching that. That goes into a huge chunk of the soft skills and what's in the most demand. And overall professionalism, I'm going to say, is just conducting yourself well in a professional environment. So speaking well, not being emotional, remaining logical, participating, not bringing outside work things into inside work things, meaning politics or the economy or your relationships or your family or any of that. Keep them separate for a while. Focus on just simply execution, showing up, doing your job, and doing it well. Now, if you make friends through work, that's a different story. But when you are on the clock and working, remain professional and remain objective. All right. So I'm going to lump another two of these together. 50% lack motivation or cited lack of motivation, and 50% of Gen Zers themselves say that they want to prioritize work-life balance. Harsh truth with this one is actually going to go back to one of the things I said earliest in this video. You are 11.7% of the workforce and growing. You are competing against millennials, Xers, and boomers. And while you are trading spaces with the boomers, you still have 77% for the next 5 years plus of Xers and millennials who you are competing against. That's the thing that you have to remember, because there's also a lot of people who are making career shifts, career transitions, going back to school, learning new skills, whatever it might be. So you might think that, oh, I'm a Gen Z, I'm entry level, I'm only competing against other Gen Z. And that may not be the case for people that are moving careers or moving industries or making these big changes, which isn't uncommon right now because a lot of career paths are being uprooted and changed. So yes, you both might be entry level, meaning a millennial or Xer versus a Zer or a Zoomer in regards to a particular position, but they're still coming with all of the work experience that they have and the way to conduct themselves and the way to negotiate and the way to communicate and the way to be professional and the way to show up every day over their whole course of their career. So you need to think about this as you are the up and comer and you are having to go against the GOAT. Like you're going to have to go against the veteran and you have to beat the veteran. And how are you going to do this? And so if you are not motivated, then to me, the fundamental issue here is you probably chose the wrong thing. And not that you're going to sit here and love your job and every single thing day in and day out, but you need to have a sense of pride in what you do. And if you don't, then I think you chose the wrong career path. And so maybe you need to revisit that. Maybe you got sold a lie when it came to the education system or which path to choose. Again, I will also link below a video of the top in demand and the top least laid off career paths to choose and to go into, if that maybe helps you make your decision, especially for those of you Gen Zers who maybe are midstream on your college or are very recent grad or aren't even in the workforce yet. And you're maybe like, what do I want to do and where do I want to go? Keep your eye out for these. Again, I'll link that video below. Now, the 50% of prioritizing work-life balance. So that is really the main reason why I brought up the 11.7% of the workforce is you just don't have the leverage. You are not going to be able to change the workforce in terms of what employers and company standards are in their expectations of what they're working for. You have, again, you have to think about this in terms of, yes, you could look at it in a global workforce perspective, but look at it in an individual company and department perspective. If you have a department of 10 people, which is not uncommon in a bunch of small, medium companies, is to have departments of that size, especially if it's, 2 to 4 departments for kind of your core structure. Okay, so you're talking that I can either have a badass 10 people or I don't get number 11. Like that's what you are. You're 1 in 10. You don't have the power to change the workforce and dictate it. So if companies are asking for a work-life balance you don't agree with, you either A, need to suck it up, or B, suck it up. Like there really isn't an option that you have. I mean, I guess technically option C would be don't participate, but then you can't complain that you aren't getting what you want out of the workforce, or that it's being unfair to you, because it's treating everybody the same and it's asking you to only live up to the expectations of everybody else. And you are the one actively saying no. So you have to meet those consequences. So I think that this probably is a level of a unique Gen Z one. I forget what it was when the millennials entered the workforce, but I do remember there being some of these similar statistics and complaints and things along those lines. And ultimately, I think the millennial generation just realized that they have to do what they have to do, but they also realized a lot of the negatives from the work-life balance or the fulfillment and motivation go away when you pick the right thing. I think that's why there's been a lot of position creation that didn't exist before in the millennial generation, especially like in the technology space, things like DevOps, things like integration engineers, automation engineers, UI, UX. If you branch out into marketing, right? Marketing has fundamentally changed a lot. There's a lot more creative aspects than there used to be and those sorts of things. So I think that it might be something that fixes itself in time, but I think the sooner that Gen Z realizes, hey, you don't have the leverage to dictate the terms because you're not a big enough chunk of the workforce, you don't provide enough value, and at the end of the day, you're also going to be the first ones replaced by AI and robotics technology before anybody else, because you are the entry level. So you are the most at risk in every single realm. You have the most to prove in every single realm. You do not have leverage to dictate terms. So And if you want me to do a video a little bit more on work-life balance and maybe how to find your passion and those sorts of things, leave a comment below. Let me know if that's some content that you would like to see. And that's really the overall statistics and things that I have here. And so I think my biggest advice really for Gen Z is calm down. And I know that's probably not the ideal phrase. I know it's probably going to set some of you off. But when we're talking lack of motivation, work-life balance, poor communication, frequent late assignments, just relax, execute, do your job. And it doesn't mean just fall in line and do what you're told, because you also should be providing advice along the way and providing ideas, but really you should be doing that in the way of questions. I think that would be my other biggest piece of advice. And that's probably where poor communication comes in a lot of, and at least that's how it's been in my experiences. It's the way that you are presenting ideas or presenting flaws is in the form of statements and absolutes versus questions. And when you put them in questions, you are getting the person on the other side of the question, the one answering it, you're getting them to admit out loud if there is a flaw, if there is a problem, or if there is a better way. And that's a much better, more effective form of communication there. So yeah, I think I'm going to sum this up as just relax. It's going to be okay. You are going to make it. You need to earn your way. You need to prove your worth. You need to provide value, and you don't provide value without experience. And you can look around every aspect of your life, and this is the case. Especially Gen Z is the big social media generation. Are the influencers and people that you look at and that you follow and who maybe you listen to, do they have the track record or not? If they don't, then you're just completely following the incorrect person. But the most famous and highly regarded influencers that I see have a track record. When you look at the most popular podcasts, the hosts have a track record. Look at the most popular YouTube channels, Instagram accounts, TikTok accounts. They have track records of success. Well, how do you think they got that track record? They got it by just getting over that initial hump, stop thinking it's discrimination against them or that it's ridicule against them and that they're being treated differently, and realization that they're just being treated the same as everybody else, and they need to learn and provide value to be able to do that in the long run. Like, you got to start somewhere. Let's see. So I don't have any other stats here. Let's see. What else was there? Was there anything in these articles that I wanted to point out? So the other thing that I will throw in here is I do think that Gen Z is probably the most negatively impacted generation by the education system. This is going to be both K through 12 as well as the college school system. I think by and large, Gen Z was sold a lie. They were sold a lie that college is what's going to make your future. Without the college degree, you're not going to get something. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to make any money. And then you get into college, you choose a program that isn't tactical and tangible. And then on top of that, you're also now in debt and can't land a job. So it's just a gigantic triple, quadruple threat, depending on how you dice it up. And for those of you that did take a stab at guessing my generation earlier, I am a millennial, and I think that started a lot in my generation. I think that college was heavily forced. I remember actively being told in high school that I would not become anything unless I went to college. And I knew my career path didn't require college. I knew that going into IT did not require a degree at all. I knew that I could jump in with certifications. I went to vocational school while I was in high school, got a certification, went out in the workforce, and am pure on-the-job training ever since. I do have one other certification that I got 11 years ago in 2013. And otherwise, I am pure on-job training. And I think a lot of careers are that way. If you're in healthcare or law, or you are going to go into education or the engineering, these sorts of things, okay, you got to go to school. But you're coming out with a degree that's useful. Well, at least from a functional perspective, maybe not a practical perspective. Because again, I've met developers and engineers and these sorts of people who come out with their degrees but still aren't very useful within their given industry for a couple years. So, but at the end of the day, it is a true prerequisite. But a lot of career paths, that's not the case. So again, I'll link those videos below, the most in-demand careers, in-demand skills, least laid-off careers, these sorts of things, where I do address some of the ways to enter these career paths without going that formal education route, without going the college degree route, because I think that might be something that will just significantly behoove Gen Z, is really think about the path of how to get to where you want to go. Because it doesn't have to be college. You can do vocational school. You can do trade school. You can do certifications. You could just jump in straight out of high school. You could do internships straight out of high school. There's so many different things you can do. And the other thing that I'm going to say that, again, it's going to be somewhat controversial and a lot of Gen Zers don't want to hear this, is be open to blue collar. Be open to getting your hands dirty, because truly they're the ones that are farthest away from being impacted by AI and automation. Secondly, they are in such a labor shortage right now that you can get in and get a job in the snap of your fingers. It is in such high demand to know the trades: plumbing, electrician, construction, contracting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's killer to get into that right now. And it's also a great, great, great entrepreneurship route if that's also what you want. If you value that true ownership of your life, it is one of the fastest paths to entrepreneurship, where you learn a lot along the way. You will make money along the way with a very low barrier of entry. So you could really start having financial freedom much faster than other career paths. So with all that, again, lumping in these recent studies, people emailed me about and reached out about you got employers who are commonly firing Gen Zers and hiring them in the same year. They're citing lack of professionalism, motivation, poor communication, being late to work, and late work submissions. Very easily fixable. Show up early to interviews. Have a one-pager going into the interview about why you are qualified for the job, directly related to that job description itself. Show up, no matter how you feel. Do your job. Figure out what you want to do first to fix the work-life balance problem, because then you won't care how much you work. You won't care about the work-life balance because you're doing something that you relatively enjoy. And really, while you're young, think about the path you took, how you get there, and where you want to go. Because the decisions you make now will compound for the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years of your life. Look at blue collar. Look at vocational school, trade school, certifications, etc. So I hope this maybe sheds some light. Like I said, I'll put a variety of links below. If you have any questions, if you think any of my takes were wrong, if you think they're great, leave comments below, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll respond to every single comment. And if there's any other content or things you want to see on this topic, also leave that below. But I appreciate your time, and until next time. Thanks.